We've all heard of people smoking trees, but what do you do when the tree wants to smoke you? Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. We are here today to discuss a pivotal tree. We're gonna branch out with our discussion. That terrible joke brought to you courtesy of Carly, so you can go cringe in her direction. So we're going to talk today specifically about Vitu-Ghazi, the city tree, and its role in the War of the Spark, because it is actually shown on a new card. Let's show the spoiler card. We'll start with the spoiler card and we'll go from there. So the spoiler card we're talking about today is Awakening of Vitu-Ghazi. So this is three colorless, 2 green. It's an instant. Put 9 +1/+1 counters on target land you control. It becomes a legendary 0/0 elemental creature with haste named Vitu-Ghazi. It's still a land. And the flavor text says, the Eternal Armies advanced on Vitu-Ghazi. At Nissa's command, Vitu-Ghazi advanced on them. That is a fun concept. I love massive green creatures. And this is definitely an interesting twist on massive green creatures. So what exactly is going on here? Well, if you don't know, Vitu-Ghazi, the city tree, which was originally depicted on a card all of its own, and let's take a look at that card right now, actually. It is a land that taps for a colorless mana, or for 2 colors, a green and a white, and tapping it, you get a 1/1 green sapperling creature token. In the autumn, she casts her seeds across the streets below, and come spring, her children rise in service to the conclave. So Vitu-Ghazi is a massive, massive tree that actually has a guild hall located in it. The Dryad Conclave lives there. The tree itself is where Mat Celestia resides. And if you don't know what Mat Celestia is actually the leader of the Celestian Guild. Obviously, Mat Celestia, it's right there in the name. The Celestian Guild actually named after Mat Celestia. I've said it enough that it's starting to lose all meaning. So, Mat's spirit, I'm just gonna call her Matt. Matty's spirit is located inside of Vitu-Ghazi, the city tree. Now, there were a few things that happened to cause problems in the past for Vitu-Ghazi. One of them was Sodic. If you don't know who Sodic is, Sodic was the vampire lord who reigned over the Dimir, who ended up getting destroyed. But he originally caused Vitu-Ghazi to be somewhat uprooted because Mat Celestia's spirit was dormant, sleeping inside the tree, and only really communicated through Tristani. So what happened was Sodic wanted to drink up Mat Celestia's spirit because he's a psychic vampire. He's not your regular kind of vampire. He's a psychic vampire. So he basically wanted to draw in all the power of Matty into himself. There was also damage done by the Nephilim and in the fight between Project Kraj and Rakdos. So a number of things have happened to the tree, but its stability has been lessened. They tried to mend the tree, but they did it. There are still stress fractures underneath the bark and running through the branches, and they have like hidden support struts that are also placed into the tree now to try and keep it from getting uprooted and coming all akimbo. Well, obviously that doesn't matter anymore as this thing has been awakened. You can actually see the artwork of you can actually see this happening in a piece of artwork. It's kind of a little bit weird the way they chose to do this, in all honesty. When we look at Nissa's Triumph, which is a card that I talked about in a video a couple of days ago where I griped about the Triumphs. But anyways, if you take a look at Nissa's Triumph, 2 green, I even said this about the artwork, it doesn't look like she's really bringing lands out. You see the situation where this card lets you go and get lands, but that's besides the point. What really matters is you can see Nissa actually animating. You can see the awakening of the Vitu-Ghazi right here on Nissa's Triumph, which is, it's kind of weird. Honestly, this could have been Awakening Vitu-Ghazi. It's weird the way that they chose to do this to a degree, but either way, this is one of the depictions of it happening. Nissa was involved with animating this tree, turning it into a massive, giant elemental ready to go out and fight against Bolas. So we see it depicted in a number of different places. Now, before I go over that, I just want to retread back for a moment there because I did forget to mention one thing. When it talked about the seeds of Vitu-Ghazi, these seeds have mystical powers. They either grow up into saplings, or, as depicted on the card Seeds of Strength, the seeds can actually be used to infuse power into individuals. So you see the Seeds of Strength card, 1 green, 1 white. It's an instant. Target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and that is repeated thrice. And that way you can choose to spread the bonuses around, or you can target the same creature 3 times if you so choose. And it says, beneath the beauty of light and seed is the might of Vitu-Ghazi. So the light that's glowing from them and the beauty of the seeds also hides the strength of the actual tree. That's how powerful the spirit of this tree is. The seeds will either automatically by themselves grow up into saplings, or they can be harvested for magical strength. I really enjoy that. The concept of seeds comes up a lot with the Celestians. You can see it mentioned in like the Celestian, not Celestian signet there, the Celestian locket. They specifically make mention of seeds, and you'll see that kind of concept on a lot of different Celestian cards because they take after the progenitor, the one who started out the entire guild there, and that is Vitu-Ghazi, more specifically Matt Celestia. Although people in the Celestian Guild kind of look at them intertwined because they don't get to hear Matt Celestia talk. That's done through a proxy, through Tristani. So as I said, you can see this card depicted in a number of places. One is on the Nissa's Triumph, which we've already seen. One which I think is really cool is on the forest artwork. There's actually forest artwork that you can see a bunch of sparks flying by, but if you look in the background, it's kind of hard to miss Vitu-Ghazi lumbering on by, this massive behemoth of a forest. And again, I love giant green creatures. So you see this Vitu-Ghazi depicted yet again in Topple the Statue, a white card for 1 white, 2 colorless. This is an instant that taps target permanent. If it's an artifact, destroy it, draw a card. The artwork depicts Vitu-Ghazi smashing a statue, which is specifically the God Pharaoh statue. And if you don't know what that is, we'll quickly cover that. That's a 6 casting cost legendary artifact, which makes sense. I mean, honestly, being able to put out tons of these would be kind of busted. So, spells your opponent's cost, cast 2 more to cast, and at the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses 1 life. Flavor text says, a dictator's infuriating smirk, an affront to everything Ravnica stood for. And this is so they can have, this is in here obviously, I mean, when you look at what the card itself does, it's something you would want to bring if you're going to invade and be fighting against a bunch of other planeswalkers, because it makes it more difficult for them to cast their spells while also sapping their life force. So overall, that really fits into the flavor, and you get that concept of, I mean, we've all seen it in the news. You will see, like in some country that's being run by a dictator, they will tear down the statues, and that's an important psychological victory for the people living there, as it's like they're triumphing over somebody who's been keeping them down. So while Nicol Bolas hasn't really been subjugating the populace, it's still an important moment in the war, a turning point. You can see that in the flavor text where it says, Bolas cared little when his statue fell, thinking it a useful distraction, underestimating the surge of resolve it gave his opponents. I mean, you think about that. This crazy dragon planeswalker shows up and starts waging war on your plane. You're just a regular everyday inhabitant. When he does, his citadel materializes. A giant statue of him shows up that is pulling on the life force of people and suppressing magic in the area. And then you just see the city tree, something that is a fixture of Ravnica, that Ravnican residents are going to know about. It's physically come alive, and it's like, get that out of here! And it just shoves the statue down, smashing it down. That is going to make people go, Rah! And never underestimate the value of that sort of psychological response. People will fight on harder when they think there's a chance. So this right here is a pivotal moment. I don't really like the artwork that much, in all honesty. I kind of like the building, but I mean, it does what it says. It's a statue being toppled, but I can't really put my finger on exactly why I don't like it, but there's just something about it. I don't know if it's the stance of Vitu-Ghazi. I've looked at this card multiple times, and I still can't figure what it is about the artwork that just makes me go, It's certainly a cool moment, and it's interesting to see Vitu-Ghazi actively taking a role. Otherwise, if we didn't have this card, you wouldn't really see Vitu-Ghazi doing very much in terms of actually affecting the storyline visually in the cards, right? This is a spotlight card. So I do like how they've done the spotlights in acts in this set, because before they would just do 5 story cards or whatever. In this, they've got the story spotlights, but they're broken up into acts, which make it easy for you to kind of sort out Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. So this is the middle act, where Bolas's invasion is the first act, where he just shows up, he's like, rah! And the second step is the fighting back, and the third step is the resolution. Will Bolas win? Will he lose? I mean, if we're being fair, Wizards of the Coast spoiled before it even happened that Bolas is definitely going to lose, and there's no way around it. But you can pretend that's not going on if it makes you happy, because there's some people going, wait, what? Bolas is going to lose? Like, come on. Come on. Come on. That's how I feel about that. So let's return to talking about the original card here, The Awakening of Vitu-Ghazi. This is an interesting storyline card, which I like, but it's also interesting in terms of what you can do with it, screwing around with other cards. There's a couple of cards that I thought of that would be fun to use it with. One is in Standard that you can use with it right now, and that's from Dominaria, and that's Sylvan Awakening. 1 green, 2 colorless sorcery. Until your next turn, all lands you control become 2/2 elemental creatures with reach, indestructible, and haste. They're still lands. Yavimaya is aware, but not always awake. You will know the difference when you see it. So, if you want to, you can swing with a number of your lands, hold some mana back so that you have enough to cast. Admittedly, I fully admit this costs a lot of mana, but understand, I'm a dude who plays huge green decks. So if you watch me play on Arena, you'll see me playing 120 card green decks with crazy amounts of mana. So I have these crazy pipe dreams. I'm not saying this is, go, we're top of the meta, tier 1. No. This is tier fun. Forget tier 1, we're talking tier fun. So, you turn a bunch of your lands into creatures, all your lands into creatures with Sylvan Awakening. Hell, if you give them Vigilance, you don't even have to hold any back. But this setup doesn't give them Vigilance. So, you swing with a bunch of your lands, and then after your opponent's decided which ones they're blocking, then you go, bam, Awakening of the Vitu-Ghazi on one of the ones that they didn't block. And all of a sudden, that one's 9/9. Just, yeah, get you some, boy. Get you some. It's like a fun combat trick. If you want to get more dirty with it, you can play with it in Modern. Combine it with those different kind of man lands. I mean, you can turn a Mutavault, because here's what happens. The spell itself, Awakening of Vitu-Ghazi, sets the base stats to 0/0. So if you make a land that turns into a creature, the Vitu-Ghazi with this, then what happens is, after you turn it into a man land, like when you use the man land ability, like pay 1, turn this into a 2/2, then its base stats become 2/2, and then you add on the counters. So a Mutavault, for example, would become an 11/11. But if you want to get really dumb and really dirty, get you an Ink Moth Nexus, because that turns into a 1/1 flyer with Infect, right? And the 9+1/+1 counters make it into a 10/10 flyer with Infect. And what Infect does is Infect gives poison counters to your opponent when it hits your opponent. It also shrinks creatures, but that's not really important for what we're talking about. So it gives poison counters to your opponent equal to the amount of damage it did. So if you happen to hit them with a 10/10 Ink Moth, they get 10 poison counters. And 10 poison counters is how many it takes for an opponent to lose the game. Whenever a player gets 10 poison counters, they lose. So Ink Moth Nexus plus Awakening of the Vitu-Ghazi is, boom. If they can't do anything about it, if they have no way to block it, because it's going to be flying as well, then bam, you're already looking at a scenario where you just wipe them out. That's a 2-card kill combo right there. Another thing to note that's interesting about Vitu-Ghazi is it changes the name of the land. So if you want to, you can also get silly with legendary lands. You can pick a legendary land, hit it with Awakening of Vitu-Ghazi, that changes the thing into a creature. It still has its old abilities. It's called Vitu-Ghazi, and you can put it a second copy of that legendary land. And that's a fun little tweak. You can have double Pendelhavens or whatever legendary lands suit your fancy. So for me, this is a fun card. It falls right into my wheelhouse of big, smashy, green good times. And it's an interesting storyline card. The artwork itself on the Awakening of Vitu-Ghazi looks pretty dope. You can see him you can see her, I should say, rising up. Like you can see all the earth tumbling off as Vitu-Ghazi rips its roots out of the ground and surges upwards with like temple gardens and everything like that located on the chest as it staggers upwards, getting ready to go topple a statue. This card is a absolute home run of flavor for me. Let me know what you guys think. We're going to be back in a moment because I need to have people to go and scroll. I have to go double check who it is. I'll be jubbling right back. All right, I'm back. For you, it's like I never went anywhere. Let's roll the golden scroll. The people have my back on Patreon or through channel memberships. We are welcoming our newest channel member, Ricky the Magic Rabbit Hobbs. That's a long name you got there, Ricky. Thanks for joining my channel membership. Appreciate the support. And to all of you, I say, I will see you guys tomorrow.